All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Whitney Sewell. Whitney, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Honored to be here, Kevin, and I love talking about relationships. It's definitely what has built our business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've really been looking forward to this because you and we've had a few conversations and we got a cool connections in place too. There's some really awesome stuff is unfolding from it. It's just I love watching this kind of stuff happen. I love seeing the impact that gets made because man, when we serve the right people, we get to really leverage our God-given of gifts and abilities and make our biggest impact in the world and stuff. And it's all about serving the right people for sure and having the right relationships. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Kurt Ludhart, actually Kurt and Kristen. I mean, man, I love those two. I love Kurt and Chris. I love who they are. I love how they show up, and they are just they've got years and years of experience in doing what they do. They're world class experts at what they do, and they connected you and I a while back, and that is always the best way to meet somebody new is through somebody that you've already got such a great relationship with, that there's already that trust there. Because anytime Kurt brings anybody into my world, they go right to the top of the list, and I'm like, they're getting an immediate reply from me, so because it's all about the source.
Yeah,
And so I want to, thank you, Kurt and Kristen, and just I just want to express my love and appreciation for both of you and stuff. And Whitney, I just want to start. I want to turn it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context here. And we can let our listeners know a little bit about, who you are, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you get to make in this world, and also share some of the backstory with us of how you even got here, because I know you got an incredible story. So
thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I grew up in a one-stop town in Kentucky. I mean, little bitty place. Only thing is there is a lake that draws a lot of other people there. If not for that, I'm not sure we'd even have the one stoplight. But thankfully, the military got me out of that small town and really small town mindset. Right.
okay.
But yeah, I joined the military March of '01. So 6 months, obviously before 9/11, had no idea what that was going to mean for my life. Found myself spending a year in Iraq, all of '05. And, obviously, events happened there that just shaped me in a massive way. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home. I'm very grateful the Lord allowed me to come home physically and mentally. But I'm thankful to have served. But boy, did that shape me. I mean, it's just had such an impact on me the rest of my life. But came home and had no idea, Kevin, what I was going to do for a career. And I really felt like the only thing I was qualified to do was wear a uniform. And so I got hired by Kentucky State Police. There were 5 positions with 1,200 applicants, and I was blessed to have one of those. I loved working the road as a police officer. I loved being a first responder, the uniform, the discipline, the structure, all that stuff. I just really jived with the service. However, got married, and Kevin, it just hit me at that point that it was going to be hard to support a family on $28,000 a year. That hadn't really come into my world before that. I grew up in a family with no wealth, no money, and so at that point, it's like, okay, Lord, what else can I do? Like I felt like wearing the uniform was all I was really qualified to do. And I heard about this thing about rental real estate, and I thought, well, okay, started doing some research and thought, okay, if the more I learned, Kevin, I figured out that okay, so many people have built wealth in real estate, and I thought if all those people can do it, we can do something. Like we can at least have a few rental properties, whatnot. I mean, because like $200 extra a month at the time would have been a big deal. And so we bought a couple triplexes, made a ton of mistakes, learned so much the hard way. But we eventually kept searching, like, Lord, what else can I do? and I became a federal agent, and that moved us to Virginia, where we still live now. We sold those properties. We were still newly married, but we moved to Virginia in around Roanoke. And Kevin, the first weekend that we were in Roanoke, and this is going to be a big part of that of what drives us, that I know we're going to talk about more. It started then, and so the first weekend when we were in Roanoke, we went to an event to meet people, right? Just to get to know people and whatnot. We thought, okay, first weekend here, let's make some friends. And there was a pastor speaking, and he talked about how they had adopted and how there's 150 million orphans in the world. Well, my
Wow.
new bride and I, well, we had never talked about adoption before. Newly married, we had never. I mean, growing up in one stoplight town, we didn't know anybody that was adopted. We had never thought about this before. But on our way home, it seemed so simple, and we thought, well, it just seems like a wonderful way to grow our family. Why not? I mean, it was that simple to us. And I'm so thankful for our ignorance in the process that we didn't really know what we were getting into as far as the process of adoption. But within a week, Kevin, we applied to adopt from Ethiopia. 2 years later, our first son, Samuel, comes home from Ethiopia. 10 months later, our second son Elijah was born. A few years later, and many ups and downs to an adoption process, Eden Joy, our first daughter, was born. A few years later, Selah, and actually this last November, Grace was born as well, and
Wow.
brought to our family through adoption. And so we have five children through adoption. But the first couple, Kevin, and actually really three, the first three were very difficult financially for us. So I was a federal agent at the time. We were living on one income. We wanted my wife to be able to stay at home when we had children. And I mean, it was just fundraiser after fundraiser, an emotional roller coaster and financial roller coaster. And where's the money going to come from? And it was just over and over, right? And so finally, my wife and I, believe it or not, most people don't know this in our industry, but when I was a federal agent, I was also training horses professionally. And I loved that. It was just something I dreamed of doing since I was a little boy. And I was building a brand around that. I was giving clinics all over the country, thousands of people at a time, teaching them horsemanship skills, doing tricks and all kinds of things that I never imagined being able to do. But you know what? When my wife and I went on a vacation, we were walking on the beach, and we asked ourselves this question, Kevin. We said, okay, is what we're doing now going to get us where we need to go in 5 or even 10 years? And I just think the Lord just kind of hit us right in the face with the answer, and really unified us, and that it was absolutely not. And I was working more than two full-time jobs. We had two boys. I was missing everything with them. And I mean, I really didn't know them because I was working, so I was just gone all the time. And so we came home from that trip, Kevin, and decided, you know what? I knew real estate could build wealth, but I had to be ultra focused. I had to really dive in. We put the farm on the market, and it sold really quickly. I mean, so like within 3 months, we're moving out of this house and farm that we had always dreamed of. Really, all of our family had always dreamed of a place like this. So to them, this seemed so crazy. Even our
Yeah.
church family was like, "What? You all okay? What is going on?" Right? But we just knew, hey, if we don't make a decision and make some decisions that nobody else is willing to make, like we're not going to grow. We're not going to be able to have things that nobody else is willing to have. We're not going to be able to give like nobody else is able to give.
Yeah.
And so we decided, hey, if we're going to start a real estate business, and we're going to commit a large portion of our profits to helping families to be able to adopt. And so we did just that. So shortly after we started commercial real estate business, I started a daily podcast, which we'll probably talk about, where we did over 2,000 daily shows, and that helped us to grow really fast. But I started going to conferences as hard as I could go, Kevin. I mean, 2 to 3 weekends a month, while still being a federal agent, while doing a daily podcast.
Wow.
I would do 12 to 15 interviews a day, a couple days a month, and it was just all we could do to get going. But it was all about the relationships. And so it was those conferences, it was the podcasts. And I mean, before you know it, I met my business partner, and within 3 or 4 years, we had hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate. So we grew really fast, and now we've partnered with over 50 families in helping them bring their children home to adoption. And that's our big mission behind our real estate business is to help these families. So I
Yeah.
know that was a lot, but that's how we got here, and that's our big mission behind why we do what we do.
That is so awesome. And and I love hearing about your why, Whitney, because it's our why is so much bigger than just having a business that creates income, creates revenue, you
That's
know.
right.
it's like, what are we going to do with that income? What are we going to do with that revenue? What kind of impact are we going to make with that? And you guys have just found something that is just really near and dear to your heart. That not only are you having an impact through your business, but you're getting to have an impact through all of these children's and families' lives by just helping families who want to adopt and stuff. And how I mean, man, how rewarding is that? And so,
There's an eternal impact, right? I mean, to
yeah.
every one of these families, every one of these children, we'll never know, or not until we're maybe in heaven together. Anyway, the actual impact that was made
Yeah,
on these families.
yeah. It's interesting. My wife and I, our family, we there's this orphanage, the Blossom Garden Orphanage, is down in Montego Bay, Jamaica. My wife found out about it years ago, and we ended up taking a trip down there. Well, Brock is 17 now. The first trip we ever took was when he was 3.
Wow.
And so 14 years ago, we took our first trip to Jamaica to go visit this orphanage. And we took our 4 older kids with us and stuff. And actually, well, Brock was 3, and then Ellie would have been a year and a half at that time. And you know after a couple of experiences, that we took a couple of trips to Jamaica for visiting this orphanage and taking supplies and all that, and on the way back to the hotel after our second or third trip there, my wife announces that she wants to adopt. And it threw me for a loop, Whitney, because I'm thinking to myself, honey, we got 6 kids, we're good. And so
Wow.
and but she's like, honey, I just really want to change the life of one child, that just give them a leg up that they wouldn't have if it weren't for us. And so we began that process, and it was interesting. And once my wife and I started having this conversation, I started running into people and meeting people that had
Yeah.
adopted,
Yeah.
and having conversations with them. And I'm like, wow, this looks like a really cool experience. And here it is now. Abby is let me see, 7 days. Abby's 14 now. She's been part of our family for 11 years. And it has been the most rewarding experience for us and for her. And man, we have grown in so many ways as a result of having her as part of our family and stuff. And in fact, we just got back from a little family trip. We went down to Arizona over the last 5 days to go visit extended family, and took Abby with, and everybody in the extended family is just all about, how's Abby doing and all that, and just watching her grow too and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just been such an amazing experience. And so I can really relate to some of the stuff that you shared, and I'm just like, man, because it's just, yeah, it's incredibly rewarding. So okay, so now that we've got some context set here and stuff, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Whitney, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. I love the question. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh, there's so many people, Kevin. And then if I really narrow it down, there's a few key people, no doubt about it. I'll highlight just a few quickly. I would say Jesus Christ is at the top of that list, no doubt about it. I don't think we would have the business or mission or the stamina to keep going without him. The next would be my bride. And the beginning of the business was really difficult. I mean, she had to be willing to sell the farm as well, which was
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of crazy, right? I mean, to most people, it's pretty crazy. And she was just very on board and has supported me just 110% the whole way. I mean, I just cannot thank her enough. We definitely wouldn't be where we're at if she and I weren't united in this and really united in our walk with the Lord. It would not have happened. None of it. We wouldn't have had the impact either, right? On all these families. And then Kevin, there's so many relationships that were built as I started traveling and networking, and but I would share our mission. I would share, hey, this is who we are, but because of this mission, right? We have a foundation that helps families adopt children, and our investors love knowing they're playing a role in this, but it doesn't affect their returns. And so really short, but to the mission, to the point. And people, they may have just talked to 30 people at this conference, but guess what? They remember me because of the mission, not because I talked about real estate, just like the last 30 people did, right?
Yeah.
No, we talked about the mission. We connected about our families. We connected about their kids and our kids.
Yeah.
And before you know it, well, okay, we're following up and talking about business later, but
Yes.
we've built the relationship much faster
Yes.
because of that mission, right? And
That's
so I
right.
started seeing that happen over and over and over, Kevin. So I would say that's across thousands of relationships over the last many years as I became an entrepreneur. However, then there's been mentors that have been just crucial in my life, and who, one guy specifically, I did tons of research and trying to figure out who that person should be, and so many people were offering coaching and whatnot, and I wanted somebody that was still in the business and that really felt like. That I felt like they really cared about me personally, that I wasn't just a number, right, one of their number of clients, and that became to be Joe Fairless, and he's a big apartment guy as well, and we're really
Okay.
good friends now. But he's been instrumental. It's like we'll talk every other week, or sometimes even more often over the relationship. Over the years where. Hey, I can ask him a question. He's been there. He's done it. He's ahead of me enough, and has been able to provide, information that's helped me to pivot or helped me to stay on track. And I'll actually one early on, I was talking to a bunch of people at a conference, Kevin, and right before I launched a podcast, I told them I was going to do a daily show. So many of them said, "Hey, you're crazy. Don't do a daily show. Don't do that. That's crazy, and these were big name people that I really respected. And so I went to Joe and I said, "Hey, Joe, this is what these people said." And immediately he said, Whitney, that's why you have to do it. Because
Yeah.
nobody else is willing to do it. Like that's why you have to. And so that was just like the kick in the tail I needed right there to, okay, we'll figure this out. Let's go make it happen. Right. And that's just one of many examples where he's been so crucial amongst many of other relationships that have come through the podcast, just like you and I were talking about, over 2,000 interviews. Many of those people became investors, or many of those people, became business partners. But it started by that, podcast interview and sharing the mission and us having those things in common.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, and I mean, yeah, when we'll circle back to your why and stuff, because your guys' mission, I can totally see how you just sharing that, it starts attracting people to, regardless of whether they're a family who wants to adopt or not. Maybe they got no ties to adoption
That's right.
whatsoever, but your mission is inspiring, you know and people are always looking to be inspired. And when we are able to inspire them a little bit, and we create that kind of a connection, yeah, people want to come and talk with you because they just love who you are and how you show up. And then that just naturally and organically leads to business being done with the right people. But it's that connection first, that real meaningful relationship and connection. And when that is in place, and then when there's when there's trust in both character and competence, and there's alignment on values and interests, it is so doggone easy to do business together from that place.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, no doubt about it. And,
yeah,
and those mentorship relationships have kind of kept leveling up, right? I've
yeah,
met other people who are ahead of me, and other, as we've grown in our business and personally as well. And now I look for people like that in all areas of my life, whether
yeah.
it's spiritually or personally or in business. And Lloyd Reeves, I don't know if you know Lloyd or
I
not.
don't know.
He's part of he runs the Halftime Institute. He was mentored by Bob Buford, who wrote Halftime. If you've not
Okay.
heard of that, but anyway, an amazing man who's been ultra successful in business, but then just really left that to go mentor men and women now all over the world in making a massive impact. And so he'd be a great guest for your show as well. But it's people like that Lloyd, other people have connected, Kevin, that other people have connected me to, who are ahead of me that the Lord has just spoken through and led me through, the way that they have led their families and their children, their wives, and even though they're busy entrepreneurs, and where I can say, okay, I was inspired by him, right? Or I was inspired by this guy, another guy, Don Winters, one I think of, who's just been a mentor and coach and one of the fastest growing businesses that I know. Who, like you said, introduced by somebody else. We hit it off right away because of the mission, and then it's like, okay, the relationship grew really fast and even business together.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at these relationships and these people in your life, Whitney, um, I want you to think, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with a number of examples for this, but I'm just going to challenge you to come up with one. It'll probably just come up top of mind for you. But what's an example of an experience, a situation where you personally you got to make a really big impact, really substantial impact. And maybe it even surprised you a little bit in the moment, like, wow, look at what just happened there. And yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with whoever that would have been.
The impact on somebody because of the relationship with them.
Yeah. Or the impact that you had on somebody else or another group of people, even because of the relationship you had with somebody that you've already talked about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things I can think of, Kevin. And if I have to think of one, I would. There's so many things in business I could think of. Well, this
Okay.
business relation happened, and I was able to talk to this person or mentor these young men or this man or whatever. Oftentimes it's been, I would say, more mentorships in, um, guys that I am with, and maybe we're speaking on big stages together, and I get to know them, and I can see that, hey, they're really famous, but their home life is a wreck, right? And we get, and I get to mentor them in those scenarios. However, to get to your question, really the impact has been relationships that have sent families to the Omna Foundation that we've been able to help through for adoption. And so there's a couple families specifically that I know of, Kevin, that without the grant or without the support, they wouldn't have been able to bring their child home. Right. And I can see that child, or I think about that child, and I think about, wow, Lord, you didn't need us, but you used us in just a little way, right? And because of other relationships that sent that family to us or sent donors to us, or the business even to us, so we can provide in that way, right? All those relationships, even through business, were crucial in providing for that one family or that one child. Even for on this also early on when we were in one of our early adoptions before the business had really taken off, I had started the daily podcast, so I started getting to know a lot of people in our industry, right, and building lots of relationships. And there's one guy specifically who I'd become friends with, and he also became a pretty big operator in our space. And Dan Hanford's his name. I want to give him a shout out because he's got a great business, apartment business as well. But he calls me. So we were in the process of adoption. We had a failed placement. We lost about $30,000. We just spent so much time in time raising all that money, right? And now we lose it. It's a long, amazing story of how the Lord provided. But like a day or two after that, he calls me. He heard about it. He said we were friends. He said, Whitney, I've got this online event, and I would love to do a fundraiser for you all. I mean, we were just blown away, right? That had even come up. But believe it or not, Kevin, he does an online event. Within 2 weeks, we had over $25,000 back,
Wow.
from that event that people had donated. But guess what? Those people that donated were people that I had already met on the podcast.
Wow.
So it's just a
Wow.
neat that full circle of relationships there. The Lord
Yeah.
had gone before us, allowed us to build all these relationships in the industry. And all of a sudden, this one guy that I built a relationship with, who became a friend, he hears about, hey, we've lost all this money. We're trying to bring this child home. And he's hosting an event, does a fundraiser, just out of the blue, does a
Yeah.
fundraiser,
Yeah.
raises all that money back from
Yeah.
these people that I connected with through the podcast, right?
Yeah.
So it was just really neat, just how the Lord provided, like I said, went before us, but through all those relationships, many that I had built, but then one specific, right, that made that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what a powerful example right there. of the power of relationships, and when we focused on right relationships, all the other stuff just seems to kind of take care of itself, and and allowing for God to do His work too and stuff, and just kind of like you said, go before and we get to just simply be this steward, and like in my situation, I get to be this conduit of trust for the entrepreneurs in my life, and that's a role I take really really seriously, and just simple rule of thumb is I'm always like, okay, if I bring this person into Whitney's life, will that further the relationship that he and I already have, and as long as that's a yes, we're good to go. If it's a no, then that does not happen. And so, and it's just a really simple rule of thumb that's just served me incredibly well over the last 30 years and stuff. And man, I just really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. And I know, there's people listening to this is like, man, Kevin, I really love Whitney. I love how Whitney shows up. And maybe they'd like to get more information about what you guys are doing, both on the real estate side and on the adoption side. What are some websites, any resources we can share with folks too?
Of course. Just go to whitneysewell.com. You can learn
Okay.
about our real estate business, which is LifeBridge Capital, also lifebridgecapital.com, or the Omna Foundation, OMNAH Foundation.org. So if you know of families that are looking to adopt and need support, we would love to know about it, or obviously donors that are passionate about helping families. But if you go to whitneysewell.com, you'll learn about all that there. I would also encourage you, especially men, there's a challenge that will pop up that will lead you for free, that will lead you through creating a family mission statement for you and your family. So I will personally walk you through helping you create a family mission statement with your family, and why that's important. And so I would just encourage you to do that, but go to whitneysewell.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, once again, Whitney, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
I appreciate you, Kevin. And I mean, relationships. I love your focus on relationships. I mean, we would not be where we're at if not for relationships, and not just in business, but spiritually and personally. And I think about the men the Lord has put in my life, over the years that have mentored me and took me under their wing, even at a young age, and up to now, men who are older than me and way advanced that are taking me under their wing, and I'm so grateful. So I would encourage a listener to think about, hey, no matter who you are, there's people that are behind you that you can mentor, that you can build a relationship with and help. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out for those people. Don't feel like you are unequipped,
Yeah.
right? The Lord has
Yeah.
equipped you, and there are people that no doubt I bet are in your like circle or your sphere that you can also help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Whitney, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Kevin. Honored to be here.